Hi, welcome to yet another episode of All About Marketing. This is going to be an exciting session. I have someone with me today, Sachin Bhandary, who tells stories for a living and who teaches other people to tell stories. So, Sachin, at All About Marketing, we usually talk about advertising, branding, marketing, and business. And this is pretty exciting because I would want to know how good stories are told, because advertising and marketing is all about telling good stories. But when it comes to people, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to sales, the kind of work that you do as the founder of StoryCo and as a business leadership and sales storytelling coach, uh, how do you tell a good story? Or rather, I would say my first question to you would be, what is a good story?
What is a good story? That's a good question. I think a good story is a one which moves the audience in some way. It has emotion in it. It is engaging, uh, but also at the heart of it, it has an insight. If you go back in time and think a lot about your childhood, a lot of people, if you were, I mean, I'm sure you were like me as a teenager. You probably wanted to rebel against whatever your parents had to say, right? If your parents say do this, you do exactly the opposite of that. But the same teenager, when he or she is exposed to the story of the Mahabharata, and where Arjun is about to go to the battlefield and he has a lot of questions and he's has this conundrum that how can he kill his own family members, and that's when he goes to his mentor Lord Krishna and says, but how can we do this? Isn't it wrong for me to kill my own family members? And then Lord Krishna shows him his divine form and says that, Arjuna, you are a warrior and your duty is that of fighting the right fight and winning what is rightfully yours, right? And suddenly the same teenager little bit starts believing in the idea of dharma, the idea of duty, and hence when we grow up, we become these people who want to take care of our parents and do what is right. So yes, stories, in my opinion, is all about that they should have an emotion, they should have, of course, be engaging, and they should teach you something. So there's Amin Haq, who is a very good storytelling coach and trainer, someone who I look up to, and I've learned a fair bit from him. He says that a story is truth well told. So I think that's also a very good definition. Truth well told. And Amin talks about that sometimes the truth is there, but the well told part is not there. Sometimes the well told part might be there, but there's no truth in it. So how do you bring all of these things together is what a good story is all about, I'd like to believe.
So, from the world of PR that you began in
Right.
to the world of storytelling, and then training executives, training managers in the art of storytelling, how has this journey been for you? Or what made you get into it?
Right. I think before I answer that question, Amay, I think I'd like to thank you for inviting me to do this because, in that sense, this is my first marketing related podcast. I've done one with another friend of mine, but we run this business and leadership stories on Radio One. But I come from a PR background, so for me, storytelling in marketing or storytelling for a brand is something that's very, very important, and that's something that I believe comes naturally to me. And in many ways, when I talk to clients, I also tell them that, hey, you know what? I'm not one of those guys who comes from art or theater, who believes that, activism wala voice ही होना चाहिए. Because there are business considerations also. So I understand the business considerations fairly all right because of my background in PR. And then how do you marry that? Keep an authentic voice, but yet make it interesting. Keep ethics at the heart of what you are doing, yet be able to build a win-win situation both for the brand and for its customers, its employees, is what I look at. So I think in some sense, I had the good fortune of working in PR with a lot of good brands, Amay. So when I started off, I worked with one company in Godrej. Like I used to work for a PR agency which used to manage Godrej. I was an executive on one of the accounts. Of course, had my challenges. Almost got thrown out of the agency for not being a good performer. But somehow, some person thought that this guy has some ability. Let's give him another 6 months to a year. And thankfully, because of mentoring and all of that, went on to do fairly all right. Started handling most of Godrej Group's accounts, and then brought in hotels.com, BBC World News, all of these accounts into the agency along with my colleagues. And over the years, what I realized, and as a PR person or as a journalist, this is something that you truly understand. Sometimes I'm not saying all marketeers are like that. Marketeers tend to be very inward looking. कि वो लोग अपने ब्रांड को ही हीरो समझते हैं, राइट? कि ये हमारा ब्रांड है तो दिस इज द हीरो ऑफ द स्टोरी एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. एंड आई फील दैट्स अ मिस्टेक. दैट्स probably the biggest mistake that you can do as a marketeer. But as a PR person or as a journalist, you understand that if the story is not interesting and if it does not move the needle for the audience, or if the audience is not able to connect with it at a personal level, then you will not be able to deliver any message for the brand. One case in point, I was just mulling over this. I saw one of my clients and they got some coverage. Of course, it's paid media coverage. And it says XYZ company grows from X to 10X. And I'm asking myself that if I had come across this article as a regular reader, would I read this? And the answer would be no. So the point is that even if you have owned media, just because you own a space doesn't mean that you own attention, right? Owning space is one thing, but owning attention is another. So how do you actually make that difference? Like how do you get to own the audience's attention? And in my mind, that happens when you tell the story of your environment and not just think of your brand as the hero. You think of the customer as the hero. You think of your employees as the hero. You think of people who are associated with your brand or are beneficiaries of your brand as the hero. So I don't know if I answered your question, but these were some of the thoughts.
Right. So again, going back to a story, right? What are the key things that need to be in a story? So when you coach people, right, either an individual or a team, how do you get them to tell stories? What's the process that you have, right? If I have a story, right, and my story would be I have started a podcast, right? Everyone has their story. So how do you get them to tell a good story? What's the process like?
Okay, so there are multiple approaches in my mind about this. It depends on context, situation. Regardless of the context, if you start off with the conflict, that's a good way to get audiences interested in your story. So I'll give you an example. If it's a brand perspective, then there's a brand called Zora, which in 2016, so Zora is a cloud billing software company. And most cloud billing software companies will say ours is better because we have more features than the other cloud billing software company and so on and so forth. But Zora started saying something else. It said that we now live in the subscription economy. What they basically were getting at was the fact that a lot of the companies which actually sell products once and give customer support for the rest of the lives are actually going to fall behind the subscription companies, which are Spotify, Hulu, Netflix, etc., which have a subscription model. So they have higher customer lifetime values. They also get better feedback from customers to improve their products. And if they want to launch a new product, the audience is already...
They have an captive audience.
But how do you start the story is really important, right? So if you are able to hook the audience, and in my mind, you don't hook the audience by talking about yourself. You hook the audience by providing a problem or a conflict that they probably haven't figured out yet, or maybe they have figured it out, but you are sort of tapping into that problem. So this is one. We now live in the subscription economy, and if you don't change, you are going to be a relic of the past. That's one way that Zora could have opened the story. In the same way, when Airbnb talks about itself, in the earlier days, it would say stuff like, I mean, I think a good example is Brian Chesky himself. So even today, when you look at Brian Chesky's interviews, and if he's asked, Brian, what's Airbnb? Most CEOs would say this, right? Airbnb is a platform that connects travelers with hosts. We have done so many million trips, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, fine, one more tech company. But Brian Chesky, almost to a fault, says something like this: we were broke designers in San Francisco who could not make rent. Uh, and that's when we saw that there was a design conference that came to town, and we had about 5 airbeds. We put them out, we put it on Craigslist, and because hotels were expensive or were booked, 5 people stayed with us that weekend. We made about $1,000 odd, which helped us pay the rent, but also gave us some extra cash. Maybe it was more than $1,000, I don't remember. And since then, we realized that there are more people like us out there who want to make an extra income, but also want to meet really cool people. Since then, we've been building Airbnb around trust, and today we have so many million travelers and all that. So here as well, you are opening with something that is a hook, something like even when he starts, we were broke designers in San Francisco. Because as a human, you are tuned to listen to someone else's story of a struggle or a challenge. You get tuned to it. And there's an interesting saying in storytelling. I don't know who I should attribute this to, because I've read it so many times in different books. Is that, we all want our heroes to win, but we want them to go through hell before they do. So if you are telling a story where the graph goes from point A like this to point B like that, you can be sure that it is not a good story. But if it starts here and then it goes down and then it rises again, that truly the hero's journey in many ways, yes. So I think there's this clip which does the round on YouTube a lot. Kurt Vonnegut, who was an American author, gave a lecture or a talk once in which he says that storytelling is all about taking a character, pushing him into a pit, and lifting him back again. Right? So the pit is super duper important. So I would say, if you want to tell a good story, before everything else and a lot of techniques, conflict is at the heart of it. So figure out what's the conflict to which you want your brand, your product, your story to be an answer to. And then, of course, you can build from there.
So there is one interesting bit that you told me about, which is how it all began for you, which is your story, right? In a way, could you share that?
And like how we've been discussing, I was a part of a PR agency. And the long story is that I was 24. I wanted to travel the world, but I just didn't have the money. I didn't have the money, neither did I have the guts to do something like that at 24. And this was almost 20 years ago, so you can guess my age. Then I had made a promise to myself that if I achieve certain goals in my PR career, then I will quit, which is what I did at the age of 32 back in 2014 towards the end. And I did a project called the 12 Project. 12 months, 12 countries, 12 challenges. And one of the challenges is probably the most interesting one.
So you traveled the entire year, that one.
Eventually turned out to be 18 months on the road, 14 countries, and 8 challenges instead of 12.
So which countries were these, if I may know?
I started off with Thailand, then went to Sri Lanka, came back home for a bit to manage visas and all that. And then I went to Brazil via Ethiopia, of course, just a layover. Then I spent 4 months in Brazil.
4 months in Brazil. Wow.
Yeah, 4 months in Brazil. But I was not traveling around a lot. I was...
And you were traveling solo?
Yes, I was traveling alone. I stayed in Rio for about 45 days. I was in a city called Salvador for another 45, 50 years. Till one point, there was somebody else who joined me after that, a friend from India. And we traveled together for another 3-4 months later. So Brazil 4 months, then I crossed over to Bolivia. From Bolivia, I went to Peru. From Peru to Ecuador, from Ecuador to Colombia. And then from Colombia, I had to go to US because I wanted to get my US visa stamped. because Panama had this rule, probably they still have it, is that you get a free entry if you have a US visa, but that visa should have been used at least once. So which meant that I had to go to the US. I went to Miami, spent a few days there, then came back to Panama. From Panama, I went to Costa Rica. I got dengue in Costa Rica. So that made the journey a bit difficult. And during when I had dengue, I had to cross over to Nicaragua because Costa Rica is very, very expensive, and I was almost like a broke backpacker. So went to Nicaragua, spent another 15, 20 odd days there. But I just didn't feel my body was recovering. Of course, being on the road doesn't help you recover. Or paisa bhi khatam ho raha tha. And I just didn't know what was going to happen next. So then I decided to come back. But I continued that lifestyle for some time. I used to do travel journalism pieces for a lot of publications like Forbes, Mint Lounge, Roads and Kingdoms. It was a website that Anthony Bourdain had invested in. Then
So you're living the dream life.
Perceivably so, yeah. I mean, it looks like a dream life, but it comes with its own set of challenges, right? So, of course, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, but I wouldn't also tell someone that blanket advice, no, follow your passion and all that is also something that you should take with a pinch of salt, because to follow your passion, you of course need some kind of a backing. You need preparation. Like I could do it because I was preparing.
Your family was okay with it?
So that I wasn't married that time. I was single. And I may do it again. My wife is also a lot like me. She's an adventure seeker. She loves all of these things, and we are planning to maybe in the next 4-5 odd years, at least to take 6 months off and travel. But it does come with it just becomes that much more difficult, right?
It's twice as much expensive, right? To begin with.
Yeah. That is one way to look at it. But then if you want to do a lot of videos, you have someone to click pictures and make videos. So I've been trying to train my wife. If she gets to know, she'll stop clicking pictures and making videos. So so that those are all the things that happened. But the most interesting experience, Amay, was which brings us back to storytelling, is this place called Santo Tomas in Peru. Now, most people who land to Peru will go to Cusco, because Cusco is the place from where you start your journey to go to Machu Picchu, and it's a really good, beautiful tourist town, and anyone who can should go to Cusco and to Peru once in their life.
So Peru is all mountainous, right? Most of it.
Yes, it is mountainous, but it's got the Pacific Ocean on one side. So it's got a lot of beautiful beaches as well. It's got, in my mind, I mean, I have been to a few countries, so I think I can say this with experience that in terms of food, Lima, I don't know about other cities, even Cusco was fantastic. Peru has some of the most developed, varied cuisines that you will ever get to taste. Have you heard of ceviche?
I've never tried any South American food, I believe, except for Mexican. I have tried, yeah, tacos, but I would count it as Mexican more than.
You can call it Tex-Mex. No, that's the version that we get mostly here. No, but ceviche. So ceviche is basically raw seafood, which is soaked in lime juice and served with like salads like onions and all that. So in some way it is reminiscent of sushi, but it's very different. It doesn't have that, how do you call it, that umami taste. It's very different. It's actually appeals a lot to the Indian palate, and my mouth is watering as I speak about it. So I think I'll stop talking about Peruvian food. But yeah, Peru is a country that I went to, and I went to Cusco. From Cusco, I went to a place called Santo Tomas where no one goes. So Santo Tomas is about 180 kilometers from Cusco, and it's a back-breaking 6-7 hour ride. Okay, so you take these small micros, these small buses that are there in Latin America. They're called micros. So we think that apna Maharashtra ka ST and all that is very local, rural, or whatever you want to call it. But you should see the micros in Latin America, in Peru especially, people come with their own plastic stools in the bus. Yeah, so the center wala aisle between two seats.
Okay. Oh, and sit in the bus.
Yeah, you carry your own plastic stool, keep it and sit on that. Not just that. People bring goats, people bring hens, people bring all sorts of things. Like stuff that you've never seen in your life before, you'll get to see in those buses in Peru. So anyway, so that kind of a bus ride took me to Santo Tomas. So Santo Tomas is known for one thing and one thing only, and that is a fighting festival called Takanaku. So Takanaku in Quechua, the indigenous language of Peru, means to fight one another. So I had gone there because I had watched a documentary on the festival, and I was like, if I'm crossing through that part of the world, I definitely want to do this as a challenge. So I said I'll go and participate in this festival, and I reached Santo Tomas on 24th night on Christmas Eve. Small town, but a lot of activity. It was buzzing with people, really good mood and all that. Next morning, I saw a lot of young people wearing masks and jumping in a very strange fashion. They congregate, got together in this one town stadium sort of a thing in a huge circle, and one by one people would step in to the circle and call someone else to fight. So maybe I'm the yeah, so it's a bit like this. So I'm wearing a mask and I say, Amai, I want to fight you. Now, tradition dictates that because of the fact that it's a time honored tradition, your ego, everything is associated with this, you will be there and you will answer that call. You will have to enter, right? You enter, I take off my mask is when you realize that, oh, this is Sachin. And why does Sachin want to fight me? It could be because, I had a crush on a girl, but you took her away from me. That's a fair deal. You can fight because of that. Like that, you can fight for any reason. You took.
And how long does the fight last?
So that's the interesting part. The fights don't last very long. They are probably about a minute. Minute is also like very long because if you bleed or if one person falls down, the fight is over. There's no concept of winner or loser in the fight, right? So ऐसा नहीं है कि वो खत्म होने के बाद एक का हाथ ऊपर.
It's ceremonial more than.
Not ceremonial because the punches are real, man. You get hit. So that way. But the idea is it's a form of social katha. I spoke to a village elder after that because I was writing a story about it for Mint Lounge. So he said it's a form of social catharsis. Whatever problems that you've had with one another through the year, you're supposed to forget all those problems after this fight and wipe the slate completely clean and start the new year. That's the idea. So they try to resolve their problems like this and all that, and there's evidence that it works, right? So now the interesting thing is that 24th ko I realized that fights don't happen just on 25th. So 25th that happens in Santo Tomas, 26th it happens in a small village called GK, about 5-6 kilometers from Santo Tomas, and it goes on till 31st in the entire region. It's like a big district across the mountains. So it happens in different places. So I told myself that let me not fight today because I want to take pictures, make notes and all that. But I was procrastinating. I was lying to myself because I was really scared. Anyway, so now 25th is done. My pictures are done, notes are done. 26th morning, I take another micro, and just 15-20 minutes later, I land in this place called GK. And in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to be easier because ye to Santo Tomas nahi hai. Santo Tomas is like the capital of that region. So this should be easier and all that. I put my foot on the ground and I realize that I've made a big mistake. I look at the arena, it's probably 5-6 times bigger than Santo Tomas. There are 5-6 times more people. And the other interesting thing is that while people in Santo Tomas work mostly with the bureaucracy, they are in the administration because it's the it's the capital of the region. In GK, everybody looked like they worked on a farm. So everyone was pretty strong. And it looked like these guys are here to land a mean punch onto you. So I was scared. And I asked myself, how many people know that I'm here? And I realized it was my mom and a very close friend of mine. Said, these two people I can manage. Nobody else knows. Fatal in the sense, no, nobody dies. At least that's not. I've not heard that. But yeah, you do have bruises. You can have a broken nose. Stuff like that is very, very common. And it's scary. Like when you look at it itself, you're like, that's the last thing I want to do. So I was like, I'm going to just go back probably. I had friends waiting in Cusco. I had a few Brazilian friends who had come to Peru to spend time with me during Christmas. And I had given them an escape and just gone there alone because I knew for a fact that it's going to be really embarrassing. I didn't want any one of them to witness that. But as I had all these thoughts, right? There's a voice in my head which asked me, Sachin, if you don't fight today, what's the story that you're going to tell your future wife and kids? And suddenly, I just felt this surge of energy. I stood up, I went to the organizers, and I said, I want to fight for amistoso, which is friendship. And one bloke responded. He came out, and I used to think that the fight lasted for like a minute or something. But one day I actually recently counted the number of seconds. And can you guess how long the fight would have been? It was 15 seconds. Yeah, 15 seconds. And trust me, when I was doing it, it felt like 15 years of my life I was getting punched in my face. And the fight got over. It was all okay. Everybody appreciated some foreigner coming and doing this and all of that. I did have a bruise next to my eye. Thankfully, he didn't punch my eye. And then later that afternoon, I had a bus which was going to take me back to Cusco. So I was just thinking because I was alone going back. I was just thinking that how did I get the courage to fight? And I realized that the courage came from the fact that what's the story I want to tell in the future? Is the story that I chickened out and went away and I will never tell the story to someone? Or is the story that even if I lost, even if I got punched in the face, I did step up, and in a country which is halfway around the world, I participated in that fight. And today, that's why I'm able to sit and narrate this story to you as well, right? So that day I realized that stories are so powerful that it makes you do something beyond your present ability, resources, etc. And that's why we do most of the things in life. I mean, I quit my career. You started, future ready media. You are also somebody who I see that is working really hard in figuring out how to bring AI with marketing and with running So in some sense, that's a story that you want to tell in the future as well, right? All of us are like that. So that's the day that I truly realized that stories are very powerful. And even when I was traveling, I was not traveling for destinations. I was traveling for stories, to gather as many interesting stories as possible across this world. And I didn't do it by design, but I just felt that, it will shift something, and it has shifted something. My life took a completely different turn because of that trip. And today, whatever I'm doing, wherever I am, and I'd like to think that I'm, living a much wholesome life, a lot more wholesome than what it used to be here in Mumbai. And all of that is thanks to that trip. But yes, that probably is where I sort of got the idea that I wanted to do something with stories. What exactly that would be, I didn't know. That was 2015. It took me another 5 years to figure that out. And in 2020, April is when we started this company, the StoryCo. Our company's premise is fairly simple. We believe that stories are the best form of communication for humans. So how do we bring the power of stories to the workplace? Through leadership, through marketing, sales, and even in building great teams. So that's essentially what StoryCo does.
It's a brilliant journey that you have just narrated. But if I have to apply this, right, as a layman and think of like, I recently saw that on LinkedIn you do these one story a day, right? You are
the 100 everyday stories challenge.
Yeah, 100 day story challenge. But when I think of it, I don't find any story in my day-to-day life, right? So how do I find these stories? Is there a process that I can apply? Like, a roadmap that you can give that? Because everybody, I'm sure, today understands the need to tell good stories, right? It's important means of communication, especially because we are surrounded by so much of social media, so much of noise, that a good story stands out. But how do I bring that story out? What is the process that you would tell us about, Sachin?
I think everybody has a lot of stories to tell. I'll fall back on some people that I really look up to in terms of storytelling and all that, and then talk a little bit about how we can apply this in our own lives. So there's this interesting incident that I've heard about Mr. Ratan Tata. It is said that a lot of his team members are not interested in building the Nano because they felt that, this $2,500 car, how does it fit into the Tata brand? Should we do this, etc., etc.? It's very challenging. And of course, I don't know because whether it's completely accurate or not, because I was not in the room. But it is said, narrated the story of the first time that the idea of the Nano came to him. And that was when he was commuting in Bangalore, and he was in his car, and he actually, there was a scooter or two-wheeler with 4 members, husband, wife, and 2 kids, commuting on that, who fell onto the footpath right in front of his car. And knowing the kind of gentleman he was, he stepped out of the car, got them back to their feet, went back into the car. And that's when the idea struck him that, most Indian families is a family of 4 these days, right? And they all ride a two-wheeler
Which is meant for 2 people,
yeah,
actually.
which is meant for which is meant for 2 people for economical reasons and stuff like that. And he thought that, it's our responsibility to give a ride of safety and dignity to the everyday Indian. And first, it is said that he was an architect by qualification, so he used to doodle a fair bit. He started doodling a 3-wheeler. As he was doodling, he realized that either we should give the everyday Indian a complete car or not give a car at all, and hence the idea of the Nano, which was a 4-wheeler. And he told his team that my dream or my vision is to build the people's car of India, which makes sure that our brothers and sisters are able to take a ride in total safety. And it's also a dignified vehicle, and they're not always exposed to the elements. And it is said that after his team listened to this story, they were gung ho and they wanted to join Mr. Tata on his mission. So Mr. Tata has a story to tell. And I think everybody has a story to tell. Where you spoke about yourself now, that where do I find a story? Just before we started this podcast, you gave me an example about this university, which is talking about how they can provide the right kind of experience to students, or teach them the right kind of management, because they are a university as opposed to just an MBA institute. Now, that's also an interesting story to tell. So I think when people think of narrating a story, most people have this idea that you have to be like a stand-up comedian, probably like Zakir Khan, and say something so funny or so interesting. But it's horses for courses. In the boardroom, you're not going to go suck clown on your boss, right? So everybody has their own style, everybody has their own story, and everybody has different situations in which these stories have to be narrated. So first and foremost, I don't think that we need to think of it as an unachievable goal or a skill. It is not. I think all of us are natural born storytellers. We just need to be able to bring that to the workplace. And in fact, I believe that the workplace really needs it, because I say this in my workshops. So when I do this leadership and sales storytelling workshops and all that, actually we start off with the power of stories, and then we move to something called what's lacking in workplace communication. And I believe that we are all victims of MBA speak. If you look at stuff before 2000s and all that, communication was not so complicated. But जब से MBA बहुत popular हो गया, people always speak in strategy speak and jargon, And unless and until something sounds like, Naval Ravikant's poorer cousin or something like that, we don't think we are saying something interesting. So I don't think that's needed. Actually what it does is that it pushes your audience away. I'll give you an example. An example would be that a company uh, trying to say that we are very good, we are innovative, we are honest, we are very fast. Now that's an assertion. Now assertion is push kind of messaging. You push your message onto someone else, and what happens when you push people? They take a few steps back, right? And you don't want that. As an audience, would you want that? And because you're using so much information and so much assertion in your messaging, most people don't remember what you said, even the next day sometimes. But you compare that with Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, the movie, right? The movie was released, about 15 odd years ago. In my workshops, when I ask people, do you remember the names of the characters? Of course, if it is North India, not South India, people will remember the names of the characters. They'll remember what activities they did, everything they will remember. But the same people will not remember what presentation they saw at work. So why does this happen? Because ZNMD is a good story. And not just story, it's also about the structure of how the story gets narrated. Now, coming back to your point about how can we narrate stories? So I would say that before we get down to the core, or where do you spot a story, I'll probably spend some time on structuring a story. How do you tell a good story? Now, let's assume that you have something to tell. So there's one model which I like to call CCC, or CCMC in the case of brands. CCMC is character, conflict, mentor, and change, right? So who's the character, what's the conflict, who's the mentor in that story, and what's the change? So in the case of a brand, the communication would be that our customer was facing this particular challenge. So I worked with a brand called Deconstruct in skincare a few years ago, and we built a brand narrative together, Malini, the founder of the company, and myself. So the narrative was that educated Indian women feel like they are being spoken down to by mass market beauty brands, whereas they are just looking for skin solutions. And Deconstruct understands this, that you don't want to be sold something on an impulse. You want information about what you apply on your skin. And once you use Deconstruct, which uses high proportion of actives in their products and also gives information about what you apply on your skin, you don't just get the skincare results that you're looking for, but you also get the satisfaction that you're working with a brand that respects women. So information over impulse became the brand's narrative. Now, this model essentially is your character, conflict, mentor, change. Who's the character? Educated Indian women living in metros. What's the conflict? Being spoken down to by mass market beauty brands and not getting the skincare results that they want. Who's the mentor? That's Deconstruct Skincare, which is talking about the proportion of actives and providing information to people. And the overall change is that you'll get the skincare results you're looking for, but we are not going to sell you something on an impulse, right? So we respect your intelligence. Now, to Malini's credit, she actually used this narrative immediately after we did the work in her investor presentation. And she was able to raise about 2 million pre-seed from Kalari Capital. And she says that a lot of the credit goes to the brand's clear narrative that we were able to lay out together. And she also started doing consumer communication basis this, which was pretty interesting. But I think the most important point was that she started building a team around the mission of building products for the information seeking consumer, right? So that was a narrative back then. So CCMC is one way. That's one way to tell a good story: character, conflict, mentor, change. Only suggestion I have is that don't spend too much time in character setting. Directly get to the conflict. Educated Indian, so I can say this: educated Indian women live in the metros, and they are now, 30% of all kind of customers online, blah, 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 blah. And then I can come to the conflict. As opposed to that, I would just say educated Indian women living in the metros feel like they are being spoken down to by mass market beauty brands. So you're bringing the conflict right on top. So we spoke about conflict earlier also. I'm speaking about conflict again. And I truly believe that conflict is the heart of a story. So this is CCMC, right? That's one way to narrate a story. There's another format which I like to call back then, but now that's why. Many times you're not narrating the story of your company and probably not even of your customer. You're narrating the story of the environment or a big shift.
So it's much more universal in nature.
Yeah, a big shift in the environment. Right. So I have an example to share about that also. So I've been doing a lot of work with this logistics company called Coldstar. Fantastic company. Samir and Shagun, leaders of the company, I have worked very closely with them, had the opportunity to learn from them also about logistics, which is why I really enjoy my job, because it helps me understand so much about different industries. Now they came to me saying that we need to build a new narrative because we want to go from just being a logistics company operating in temperature controlled products to ambient also, matlab non-temperature control. So not just thanda products, normal temperature products also. So bags ho gaya, Fevicol ho gaya, sub type ke products. So they deliver these products. They're a B2B logistics company. They're not like a FedEx and all that, which delivers to the customer. So in their case, what we did, so I asked them a question in a workshop. What's the villain that you're helping your clients fight? Now note this. If you say, what's the villain that you're fighting? A lot of time the answer of that would be, I'm trying to fight attrition. That won't give you a customer narrative, right? You have to think of your customer as the hero of the narrative, hero of the story, and think of yourself or your brand as the mentor in that story. So if your customer is Arjuna, you are Lord Krishna, just to make it a little more visual for people. And so I asked them that question, and both Samir and Shagun said we are helping them fight stockouts. So interestingly, what we realized when we were doing research is that 3 to 5% of a lot of companies' top line, whether it's manufacturing or retail, is lost because of stockouts. And why does that happen, and how is it actually creating a problem for these companies is something that we figured out. And eventually, along with Samir and Shagun, the narrative that was built was on back then, but now that's why. So it was something like, gone are the days that Indians would wait 6 months to get a gas connection. We now live in the want it now era. And in this era, if your product is not available when and where the customer wants it, you don't just lose a sale, you lose brand reputation as well. And that's why we believe that Coldstar is going to be a competitive advantage, because we believe in delivering zero stockouts for our clients. Because what we've realized is that products which are available consistently over a period of time when and where customers want them go on to become loved brands of tomorrow. Right? So never stock out is their rallying cry to clients. But if you look at it, if you try to think about it, Coldstar embodies all of these things. Of course, there's more to the narrative, but I think that will become an intellectual exercise.
So, do you also help them then craft their vision, mission statements?
In fact, we also did a workshop in Goa.
Yeah.
Now, that's like the mantra that we keep saying. So whenever somebody says day out, everybody responds with never stop. Yes, it becomes a part of the project in many cases, yes. So their vision basically is their mission is day in, day out, never stock out. In fact, we also did a workshop in Goa, and now that's like a mantra that we keep saying. So whenever somebody says day in, day out, everybody responds with never stock out.
And how long does your typical engagement with any company last for something like this?
Building a brand narrative can take anywhere between 6 to 10 weeks. A lot of it is also dependent on how much time I get from the management and how regularly I get the time. Because my job as a consultant sometime, as a coach and also a trainer to a certain, coach and a consultant, is to help them figure out their narrative. So I am not, so unlike, let's say, a creative agency, which takes a brief from you and then creates a spin, which may be in some cases imaginary, I am trying to find your story.
So derive it from their core.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, of course, we look at the environment, we do research, all of those things are there, but it is your story. And that is why more often than not, when we work on brand stories and all that, we've seen that it becomes the client's natural language, because they are not trying to force fit something that is not them. So Never Stock Out was very easy for Coldstar to adopt, because uh, it is who they are. I am just helping you, uh, you know,
Their truth told well.
truth well told, like Amin said, right? So I'm just helping them find their truth. Uh, and interestingly, when you find that truth, it definitely helps your business. So Samir tells me that, earlier, let's say if they approach 20 odd clients, while they are very good and they are known in the industry, but especially when they are going to ambient product companies which don't need the cold chain and all that, it used to be a bit of a hard sell, right? So they would probably close about 1 of 20 or something like that. And now I heard him say that they are doing 5x better. So it's about 5 clients that they are closing out of 20 that they are approaching. So that's a it's direct revenue, right? So if you're able to close more conversations easily, so that's what I say, that if you tell a good story and the story lands the right kind of message, what it does is that it makes things easier for you. A lot of people say, "अरे इसमें इतना काम करना पड़ता है, इतना सोचना पड़ता है." But what you're not realizing is that if you do put in the work, everything else gets easy. जहाँ पे आपको 10 कॉल करने पड़ते थे, वहाँ पे आप शायद 2 कॉल्स में क्लोज, जहाँ पे you are pushing your team member to work long hours and achieve the mission of the company, as opposed to when they discover the mission on their own because you narrated a great story, they will probably take more ownership and do the job that is supposed to be done. So there are many different ways that stories help. So this was back then, but now that's why there's another model that I like to call reveal the villain. If you look at most of us, if you look at any story for that matter, a story is as interesting as
The negative character.
the villain in that story. So, for instance, of course, Dhurandhar 1's success had a lot to do with Rehman Daket, Akshay Khanna, right? He was an interesting character. Look at Sholay, it is Gabbar who we remember more than Jai Viru or even Thakur. So, my hypothesis is that if you help people identify the villain in their lives and how is the villain negatively affecting them, then they are more likely to want to work with you. So, for instance, if it was Airbnb, right? Airbnb's reveal the villain would be something like, what most of us don't realize is that hotels, while charging us a lot of money, don't give us an authentic experience wherever we go. It's the same experience that you get everywhere. And this is counterproductive to the idea of travel, because travel was all about serendipity, about authentic experiences. And that's why we suggest that you live with a local, and we as Airbnb are here to help you do that. Something like that would become their reveal the villain. So that's one another technique.
Sure. So structure is the first part that you said. That's the first thing that you tackle. What comes next after the structure?
So, next after structure would be that, I mean, I would like to say that a lot of people worry too much about structure and delivery and all of those things, which are very important. But what's equally more important, I believe, is the ability to reflect and find stories, and not stories because they are the end. Stories are only means to an end, right? Why do I need to find stories? Is because every story is a vehicle for an insight. So, can you learn from your own life? Is the question that I pose to people. I say that, life is always trying to teach us something. Question is, are we learning? So that was also the topic of my TEDx talk. And that's the concept that I like to call storyflection. Reflect on everyday life stories, learn from them, and narrate them to achieve success for yourself and for others.
So are there techniques that you teach for people to observe before they reflect in your workshops?
Yes. So we recently, I mean, I actually run a community called Story Club, which is for executives mostly and entrepreneurs also, to get success, whether in career, leadership, or sales, or even in life, using the power of stories. The core of what we do is to help people reflect on their own experiences and through that learn. And I think narration comes later. What comes first is the reflection and the learning aspect. See, there's a friend of mine, his name is Pankaj Mishra. So he's a journalist. And he says that he started his career and he used to worry a lot about how many people will read my story. And today he says that even one is an audience. And he says that one can also be me. So as long as a story resonates with you and it teaches you something, I think that it's done its most of its job. The narration part, and you get to, because of that, become, let's say, get a faster promotion or sell better and all that. In my opinion, that's a bonus, a very good and important bonus, but it is definitely a bonus. So I believe that story flexion, the ability to reflect on your own life stories, can help you become a better person over a period of time. How do we do that, right? So, I like to think of it as a pyramid. The base of the pyramid is something that we do very regularly, which is consumption of content, right? What I see in people is that most of us consume content mindlessly. We open our reels and you suddenly
Doom scrolling.
doom scrolling, and 20 minutes gone, right? As opposed to that, if we are a little more conscious of our content consumption, you probably need to ask yourself, what is it that I learned from this piece of content? So, I mean, I'm a big fan of newspapers, and if I did have the money and the resources and the time, I would actually start a campaign on bringing newspapers back to everyday life. Interestingly, in regional languages, newspapers are still growing, and newspapers are considered to be a lot more credible than social media, etc. So I read newspapers every day. So this 100 everyday stories challenge that you were talking about, a bunch of the stories come from what I read, or when I watch a video. It could be an OTT series. What is important is that you take 15 minutes at the end of each day to ask yourself, what did I learn today? And more often than not, you will find content से तुम कुछ ना कुछ सीखोगे, right? That's the base of the pyramid. The next step I would like to say is observation. So today, when we spend time together,
The newspaper is one. What other things could be? Like, I am on Twitter. I would consider Twitter also to be a good medium to get good information, right?
100%. Yes, 100%. So whatever medium you are using to consume most of your content, you can use that to learn something. Because what happens is that most of us don't retell what we hear.
This is mindful consumption. Like, you plan and you have a set appointment with that.
If it's that way, it's great. I'm not sure if it works. It will work.
Because that used to be habit with the newspaper, right?
That's why I like sticking to the newspaper, though I do, because of Instagram and being active on Instagram now, find it difficult to just stay, control my content consumption. But what I definitely do is that at the end of each day, I spend about 15, 20 odd minutes just asking myself, what were the storific moments of the day?
So you said first one is the consumption.
Consumption. That's the base of the pyramid. The next step is observation.
Observation. Okay.
So today that we had this opportunity to interact behind the scenes as well, and in this conversation also, I will go back and ask myself, is there something interesting that I observed today while working with Amay and his team? Is it something that taught me something, etc.? So you ask yourself, how did I feel emotional, sad, happy, felt like I got to learn something new, etc.? These questions, and you will find that there are some moments like this on a daily basis. And that's observation. So, for instance, I do narrate a lot of stories which are based on observation as well, in terms of how my wife deals with things, and that also allows me to appreciate her more. Something that my mother has also done. I will talk a little bit about Sandeep Bakshi, when he took over as CEO of ICICI after Chanda Kocher's infamous exit, I read a new article in the Ken a couple of years ago when ICICI posted their best ever quarterly performance ever. And just a few years ago, people were writing off this company because attrition was high, trust in management was very low. And to take over a company at that time and to be able to turn that around is stuff that legends are made of. And what I read is that he did a lot of policy related changes. So he did away with bell curve assessments and all that. But how he was able to signal to people that this guy is different and things are going to be different is by what people observed. And that observation was that there are apparently two types of elevators at ICICI's headquarters in BKC. One of them is for normal staff and there's one which is for directors and above. And Sandeep Bakshi, it is said that the day that he took charge as CEO, or maybe even before that, just that people did notice, is that he's stopped taking the director's elevator. He would always take the ordinary staff elevator. And so imagine this, you are getting into the elevator and right in front of you is the CEO of the company who otherwise is sitting in one, corner office which is not accessible to you and all that. So that signaled to a lot of people that there's going to be a change. And that's how people started trusting Sandeep Bakshi a lot more. And this is a story of observation for the people who've associated with that. Of course, I read about that and that's how I know if I'm successful in what I'm trying to do is that I want to take people from thinking of storytelling for better results to storytelling for a more internal journey,
or maybe a cohesive team, right? Some common belief that makes people go beyond just the results, beyond the monetary incentive, or like the deconstruct story that you gave, right? Matlab, what would you rather want to believe that you did? You want to believe that I raised so much money and I sold off my company and I became rich? Or would you want to believe that I came up with a product which had a certain purpose and whatever monetary benefit I got out of it is a result of...
yes, it's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct.
Correct. नहीं, telling पे बहुत ज़्यादा focus है. I think the story is equally important. So I'll give you an example from my own life. So my relation with my mother was a bit strained in the early years of my marriage. Now you have to manage your wife and your mother, and you know that your mother is being unnecessarily judgmental or whatever you want to call it. So it was a very difficult time.
Because it becomes, I think, a generation gap coupled with the situation. So it's both things are happening at the same time.
And you are there at the center of it, right? You have to manage this side, that side, both as a man, etc.
But you can't.
Yes, that's true. So उस time पे, तो there was a time that I used to think कि यार ये मतलब what is happening, like somebody I used to look up to and all that. And there were moments where I used to feel that maybe I just didn't see it. My mother has always been like this or whatever. And in those moments, I used to remember the story that I'm going to narrate because she's the only superhero I know. Every time that I thought of that moment, it brought back my conviction in our relationship and what she has done. And that is what gave me the, whatever you want to call it, energy to be persistent, be patient with her, try to make her understand things.
Endure that.
Some memories are a story, right? They are stored in the form of a story in your mind. It's important to retain them. It's important to keep a hold on them. And that is why I feel that it's important to have a story for every important phase of your life and keep that, because at the end of the day, what is your life but stories? Like, for instance, my wife Sarika, it is the stories that I tell her about how I was before we got married and all these countries that I went to. And she will always want to know, oh, Brazil mein teri wo girlfriend thi, kya scene tha, etc. I mean, of course, she enjoys talking about all those things. So this is the glue, right? This is the oil. So in many different ways, ek to it can help you in having better relationships. The story flexion habit can also help you put focus on the good things that someone did. It's very easy for us to remember कि यार इसने ये किया वो नहीं किया. I have a problem with this. I have a problem with that. But have you remembered the storyfic moment where your wife had everything ready for you the day you were going for a big pitch, right? You may forget that. You may not, because it's, but story flexion or remembering our own life stories will, to a certain extent, if not 100%, put the focus back on important moments in life. And these important moments may be very small, but I feel that these moments have the power to transform your life in many different ways. So I feel that it's important to not just look at the telling. So I'll give you an example. I was a rookie, 24, 25, just started off my career. So I was appointed as Mr. Godrej's PR manager, which meant basically that he would use my phone to talk to journalists after quarterly results of Godrej Consumer Products, Godrej Industries and all that. And it was probably the first or second such engagement. That afternoon, he asked me, after all calls got done, Sachin, are we done? Because if we are, I'd like to leave. And I managed to mumble something like, yes, sir, because so young and trying, and he was a stalwart back then, he still is. And he packed his briefcase and he got ready to leave. So I walked with him and I asked him, sir, can I carry your briefcase? Because I thought that's the etiquette, and he was very stern in his response, saying, no, I don't want you to carry my briefcase. A few steps later, I'm thinking he's going for the elevator. He stumbles, he bumps into a gentleman called Robert, who used to take care of food and beverage and catering for his office. And before Robert could say anything, Mr. Godrej said, Robert, how are you? How are things? Everything is fine. And all that. So that was done. I think next stop is going to be the elevator. So I, press the button and wait there. And then I look to my left and he's not there. He's already taken the stairs and gone down. This is the 6th floor of the office. That's when one of his colleagues comes running to me, towards me, and pats me on my back and says, you should never, ever ask ABG to carry his bag. He hates it. Number one. Number two, he takes the stairs when he comes to office to the 6th floor, and he takes the stairs to go back or go out of his office also. So never stand next to him or wait for him at the elevator. And I just stood still over there for a few seconds, just trying to reflect on what had just happened. In a few minutes, this man had taught me at least 3 lessons, Number one, that he did not encourage sycophancy. So, and he had the same respect for the butler to a CEO of any company. He believed in going out and talking to people. He remembered everyone's name in his team. And he remembered my name also, if you say Sachin. And it was probably the second time that I was meeting him. So that was something else. And third thing, he truly believed in fitness through very simple activities. Now all of us go to the gym and do multiple things. I'm sure he goes to the gym also, but he would walk wherever he could. He would take stairs wherever he could. So those are the things. Now that's from observation. Like I said, first we consumption, second is observation. So observation is equally important. That's the second type of stories. That's how you can gather stories. And all of us have these things. But if you don't put the spotlight on these experiences and what they teach you. So like I said, in the journal, I ask myself every day, what's the storyfic moment of the day? Write that down. But the more important question is, what did that moment teach me? How we can gather that moment could be a news item also. But what did I learn from the news item? Is there something interesting that I learned, which I can share in a conversation at office tomorrow? See, many times people judge your ability, your knowledge, your ability through what you say, right? And how you have a conversation. If you're able to connect the dots and bring in quick commerce ka experience or insight into what you're doing in your industry, it means that the boss will probably take you a little more seriously. Problem is that most of us don't even reflect and synthesize our experience. So I think both these things are important, to be able to spot a story and to be able to spot an insight and structure that in a manner that is useful for someone else.
Okay. I quite like the example of Mr. Godrej that you spoke about. Um, from that one incident, what I also ended up thinking is how important is it for a leader to be a good storyteller? Or is it okay if the leader leads by example and there are stories about him or her which get narrated? Startup founders becoming the faces of their brands, telling their story, versus in the olden times, you would have kings whose stories would be told. Because today we see a lot of emphasis on leaders being storytellers, right?
Good question. So I'll answer this in parts. Like I said, there's nuance to this. Number one, I feel that a leader, storytelling is an important tool in a leader's toolkit. But it's not necessary that every leader has to be a great storyteller, like in the case of Sandeep Bakshi. But what definitely every leader needs, either you are a good storyteller or you are somebody who's good at triggering stories. Sandeep Bakshi probably has that ability that people are narrating his stories or the actions that he took. And the most important story that you'll ever tell is your actions itself, right? Let's say, for instance, I say that we are a very ethical company and we do really good things for society, and and or I care for my employees. Like, for instance, I don't know if you came across this news piece, Gaurav Munjal, the Unacademy founder. He was wearing a $500 T-shirt while he was, asking people, sacking people, and all of. So it doesn't match up, right? So I think your actions are the most important stories you'll ever tell. So rather than just focusing on the telling part, the actions that you take are equally important. That's number one. Number two, but yes, in the case of a world where storytelling has become democratized, as a leader, you probably have higher control over how a story or a message is delivered if you have the ability to narrate that story. And we are also talking about the external audiences. Now, if a king had a poet who was there to tell the janta about how great the king is, that's one form of stories. But does the king have enough ability to influence his own council of ministers so that they do the right thing for society? That's a different skill set, right? So in some form or the other, I think leaders do need to be able to tell good stories. May not necessarily be for external audiences. Sometimes it can be for internal audiences. In fact, in a lot of work that I do, I see that leaders have to be good at this part, right?
Right.
Internal stories. How do I inspire and influence my own team members on the mission that we are working with? And external may not always be required, because then your CMO does a good job of telling a good story to external audiences. Your teams do a good job of telling stories to external audiences. So at some form or level, you will have to do this. But that brings me to another point that we've been chatting about, and that is about, sometimes I feel that it's the wrong question to think about storytelling, because I feel the deeper benefit of stories is your ability to reflect on them and how they play out in the long term. So, like I was telling you, this journal, Storyfic Moment of the Day, we spoke about consumption, then we spoke about observation. But the apex of this pyramid, Amay, is personal experience, you know. And I'm not saying that you'll have that every day. You probably will have that maybe once or twice or thrice a month, or maybe 8 to 10 times in a year, maybe less than that. But these are those seemingly small moments of a day which can actually transform your life if you reflect and put the spotlight on them. So I'll give you an example. Uh, we are pet parents, but I was a reluctant pet parent. We used to live in Bombay, and we moved to Mysore, my wife and I, in search of a better life, and thankfully we found it. Uh, And my wife always wanted to adopt a puppy, but I always kept pushing her back, saying, "अरे बॉम्बे में है घर, इतना छोटा घर है, यहाँ पे पेट कैसे रखेंगे?" Then we moved to Mysore, and I was like, "We've just moved. I don't know if this is permanent or not, so let's wait it out." So in 1 week moment, there was a dog. She used to live 4 or 5 houses after hours. And every time that I crossed her house, she would come close to me and ask me to pet her. She was a lovely dog. Her name was Dolly. She was totally black in color. And I started petting her. And in 1 week moment, like I said, I told my wife, if Dolly ever has puppies, we'll definitely adopt one of them. And as luck would have it, 1 week later, she was visibly pregnant. Okay, so she had babies, and we then had to adopt one of them. We named her Kiki. But I think, much like a lot of men, I used to think that Sarika, my wife, is responsible for her. I just happened to live in the same house. And then one afternoon, you know, after a heavy lunch and all that, I used to work from home, still work from home on most days. I heard a loud shriek from the bedroom. It was my wife Sarika and Kiki. Both of them shrieked. And I ran into the bedroom, worried about what exactly had happened. And I saw that Kiki had actually jumped from Sarika's arms onto the floor. And she was tiny. She was just 60, 70 days old that time. And it looked like she probably had broken a bone or tore a ligament or something like that. So instinctively, I got down on the floor and I checked her limbs. To my relief, she was fine. And everybody in the house was okay. But my mother was there, my aunt was there, my cousin was there, everyone. And in that moment, I still remember, Ramay, she slowly walked into my lap, sat in my lap, and looked at me with those, puppy eyes, almost to say, like, Sachin, I know that you don't show a lot of emotion, but you'll always be there for me whenever I need you. And that is the moment that I became a pet father. I since then started referring to myself as, I'm Kiki's dad or Kiki's my child and stuff like that. So, and that moment truly changed me. Now, the point is why I'm narrating this story is also because if I wouldn't have sat down with my journal that evening to ask myself what was the interesting thing that happened, I wouldn't have made a note of this story. Then I wouldn't have narrated this story in my TEDx talk. I wouldn't have used this story to tell startup founders, especially who are in the space of pet care, that you have to narrate a story of why this space matters to you and your connection with this space. You can say that pet care industry is slated to be $1 billion market, and pet adoption is growing in the country. There are 25 million dogs and there are 10 million cats and all of that. I may not be getting the stats completely right, but there are stats to this tune. But if you open with a personal story, and if I narrate this story and then I say the reason why I launched the pet care startup is because it's a tribute to Kiki, my first pet child, the likelihood of whether an investor or a customer believing in me and wanting to work with me, I mean, grows by 10x for a minimum, in my opinion. So that's the telling part of it. But the more important part is that I've realized that I became a pet father on that particular day. And to this date, Kiki is, of course, there with us. We are lucky she still has quite a few years that she will spend with us. And I try to cherish every day that we spend time together because she definitely changed my life for the good. So these are what stories do, right? If you're able to collect that memory, reflect on that memory, it's something that you can talk about in the future. It's something that makes you realize the importance of a person. Sometimes it happens, right, in everyday life, because we keep seeing each other day in, day out. It could be your wife, could be your mother, could be your husband, whoever it is. You stop valuing that person for who he or she is. But if you do remember these stories,
Familiarity breeds contempt.
contempt, exactly. Like that's a good line.
Or at least indifference, if not contempt.
Yeah, at least indifference, and that's worse. contempt is still okay. Like they say, no, the hate is the deepest form of love. So I'd much rather have people hate me than be indifferent. But if you remember these stories and remember these memories, so one of the things that we do in our family is that when people get together, and if you're sitting around, we don't just talk about regular things and everything. I like I mean, I'm blessed to be among. So I'm pretty much raised by my mother and my aunts. They're all South Indian, but for all practical purposes, they are Maharashtrian. So we all speak in Marathi at home. And once one person starts a story, so I know everything that happened in their childhood in Vasai, where they have come from, what kind of house they used to live in, how their mother really struggled to bring them up, how education was the game changer for all of these women. But if they wouldn't have told me these stories, I wouldn't know, and I wouldn't be able to appreciate, why they think the way they think, why they are sometimes a little, of course, tight when it comes to money and spending and stuff like that, because their stories have made me understand the context of their upbringing. These are things that we do. So when we sit together as a family, we try to narrate stories. So do you know last time when auntie told me this is what happened? And I just see that brings people together a lot more. So I think even in organization, there is a space for something that I like to call story circles, where people just come together to narrate or put someone else in the spotlight. So for instance, if we are working together, the last time I saw Amay working with a client, this is the way he approached that problem, whereas most of us were not able to think of a solution. Putting the spotlight on Amay, everybody's learning from Amay, but Amay also gets that spotlight that he deserves. So yeah, so stories.
Yeah. Sachin, when you do this as what you do for businesses, right? Stories, of course, when businesses want to get involved and they are looking at storytelling, it's with a result orientation. But is that something that, while you might be keen to get that as a KPI, right, for your delivery, do stories go beyond that?
Definitely they do. And I think their stories are very good even to hit KPIs. For instance, I have a lot of examples of, I have a program that we did for Saks Global. We did for 60 of their managers up until the country head of the company in Bangalore, in Manyata Tech Park. I do have anecdotal evidence of a finance head who was would ramble. He was a bit of an introvert. But after the program, he himself came and told me that now 8 out of 10 times I'm able to get decisions on a call with my North American counterparts. And that is helping me profile myself as a better leader with my team. Similarly, I've had organizations which talk about improved sales, all of these things. But like you said, to me, story flexion, the ability to reflect on your own life stories, learn from them, that part is equally important, and then narrate. And that's why this sequence is important: reflect, learn, narrate, right? So if you are able to reflect, if you're able to learn, I think that's more than half the battle won. And narration is a great bonus, and it needs to be done. There is no doubt about that. But stories are a way for you to stay in touch with yourself. Stories are a way for you to learn from your own life. Stories are a way for you to have better relationships with people around you. And stories are a way for you to win, but also help others win in life and at work.
I can't think of a better conclusion for our discussion. I think you have summed it up very well. In an age where stories mean transient things that remain for 24 hours, as in Instagram stories or whatever, you talk of timelessness of stories. And that to me is the biggest takeaway from this discussion today. Thank you so much, Sachin. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Amay, for inviting me. And I think I really enjoyed this conversation. And And that's what stays with you, right? Sometimes a stranger that you meet on the train and you're able to discuss stories from your childhood or how our families are. And I say that if conversations are an engine, then stories are the engine oil which keeps things going.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you.